Hi and welcome, it's Dean from Lifestyle Observatory. I've done a video this morning for you linking 3 of the anomalies that we look at going back to 12,000 years ago, and this is it's to do with part of the Milankovitch cycle as well, because 12,000 years ago we came out of a glacial period and we've enjoyed around 12 to 15,000 years of moderately warm climate on our Earth and stable. But we know over the last 30-40 years it's starting to all become untangled, especially if we look at the jet streams. We can see them are malfunctioning both in the northern hemisphere and in the polar, the subtropical and over the equatorial region, both northern and southern hemispheres. We know there's something going on, and I think it might have something now to do with the Milankovitch cycle. Over the last few days I've been looking at what causes the Milankovitch cycle, and nobody knows. Nobody has found the cause that sets up a 100,000 year cycle. Science has accepted the fact that this Milankovitch cycle actually does happen. We can see through the core samples going back millions of years that it is a cycle that reoccurs every 100,000 years. But what the hell is it that's causing it? So I started doing a little bit of research. I started looking at very simple things like, is it because we passed the galactic plane? And it can't possibly be that, because it takes between 35 million years and 40 million years for us to, cross the galactic plane. And, when we cross the galactic plane, we get heavily bombarded by, comet strikes. So, that could have explained why we saw the extinction of the dinosaurs, because we probably crossed the galactic plane at that point in time. We was prone to being hit by meteorites. So all of a sudden, a huge comet comes into the Earth's atmosphere, becomes a meteorite as soon as it hits the ground, and causes a complete, devastating, extinct level event. That's what took care of the dinosaurs. And it most likely goes back to around the last time we crossed the galactic plane. It's not that, because we would have a Milankovitch cycle that lasted 35 to 40 million years. So there's something else, and it's got to be something along the lines of a planet, a huge planet. It's got to be big, and I'll explain why. It could be a very large comet that is on a trajectory every 100,000 years, or the other thing it could be is a black hole. Those are the only 3 things it could possibly be, and I believe this is in a perihelion orbit like Pluto is. So just to give you, for instance, Pluto is about 37 billion miles away from Earth. Sorry, from the Sun. But it does, on its perihelion orbit, because it's got its own orbit, it does sometimes get closer to Neptune. And just to give you an idea, Neptune is 4,495 miles, 4,495 million miles away from the Sun. So, we're talking large distances. But what I did in general is I worked out how many days orbit, Mercury has, then Venus, and obviously I'll go through them. So Mercury's got an orbit of just 88 days. Then the next star out is Venus, 225 days. Then there's our Earth, and that is 365 days. Then you've got Mars, 687 days for one orbit around the Sun. Then Jupiter, as we start to get to the supergiant planets, Jupiter, 12 years it takes for one orbit around the Sun. Saturn, 29 years. Uranus, 84 years. Neptune, 165 years. And then Pluto is on its perihelion orbit, and that is a very small planet, and even been struck off the list of planets now, as you know, and that's got an orbit of 248 years for one orbit of the Sun. But think about the distance on its perihelion. So it's 3.7 billion miles away at its furthest point, but it can get closer than Neptune. So it does come into our solar system. It can get closer to Neptune's distance from the Sun, which is just 4,495 million miles away. Now, what I'm suggesting is, none of these. Pluto only has a very small, in comparison to what I'm going to talk about. Pluto only has an orbital circuit or time of 248 years. So one trip around the sun, one orbit around the sun takes 248 years. So if we're looking at the Milankovitch cycle, we know the cycle is every 100,000 years. How far away is this planet or this comet or this black hole? How far away is it? And I think out of the three that I've mentioned, I think it could be a black hole, and that's probably why we've never seen it. So we would need a very special telescope to find a black hole, and we'd need to know in what part of our solar system to look for something that is getting closer. And that's where I said there was a component missing from the Milankovitch cycle, because we've not been collecting data longer than 11,000 years apparently. And I don't know, first of all, I can't remember where I got the 11,000 years of sunspots from, a chart on my website, and I don't know who the source of that is. But if that is an accurate reading, and it does look like to me, you can see it to the present day dropping off. So whatever happened 11,000 years ago when we was coming out of the last glacial period, what happened back then was part of the Milankovitch cycle. I thought, sort of like lost the train of thought there where I was going with this. But, at that time, the sunspots were pretty much at a moderate level. But the point is that there's 2 points in the Milankovitch cycle which is critical to this. The one that we're in right now, where we're just going back into a glacial period, and the one which when we're in the elliptical orbit cycle of the Milankovitch cycle, we're at our furthest point away. So we could be trying to look for, to resolve the Milankovitch cycle, what triggers it. And I'll tell you why it's important. If we can find out what it is, and we can find out how fast it's moving back in its perihelion orbit to the closest point of the sun at its perihelion, if we can find out where it is, how fast it's travelling, and we learn about the perihelion orbit of this object, we can then pinpoint exactly when the sun will go at its, how long the sun will spend at its lowest activity point. We will find out exactly when we will experience the glacial period and interglacials, and we might also answer why our Earth is going through a magnetic reversal currently. So these three anomalies are happening right now, and I think the key to understanding these three anomalies is the Milankovitch cycle and the source of what sets up the Milankovitch cycle, because it's out there for 100% guarantee, and it is like a planet. It's got a 100,000 year orbit. So whatever is happening to this comet or black hole or huge planet, whatever's happening to it, is possibly what is affecting our planet right now. So I think because we know it's cyclical, it's obviously orbiting out there. I think we can say yes to that. Whatever it is, it's orbiting, and it does affect our sun, and it looks like it affects our sun. It definitely affects our climate. So just for this fact, if it's got a power to affect our climate on our Earth and the magnetic reversals on our Earth, then it's got the power to affect our sun electromagnetically. And of course, it is electromagnetics which is slowing down the production of sunspots. If you look in the umbra, you'll see that there's been a weakening for a long term. I've pointed it out. I think it was Watson Penn's report that said from 2014 there might not be any sunspots recorded. Well, I know it sounds a bit like Al Gore, there might not be no polar bears because we've killed them all, because we've overheated the planet. That's not the case. And he also said, didn't he, that we wouldn't have snow again. and the ice caps will all be melted. That lunatic. All of which has not come to as he stated it would. But, that's why I think this is important. We've got something to work on now. We know it's an orbitable object. We don't know where it is. We don't know how we're going to find it. If we work out that the planets get bigger the further they go out and their orbit around the sun takes longer, that could give us an idea. About its perihelical orbit, this object's orbit. It's out there, 100%. It's just got to be found. We haven't found it yet. That's why I said it could be a dark star, or perhaps not a dark star. It could be a black hole, because a black hole has incomparable. When I've seen black holes, destroy stars. Black holes are so small, but they've got the power to gobble up huge stars. So, that would fit the candidacy for this object, because it doesn't have to get that close to our sun or the planets within our solar system to affect them. So it's interesting now. I think what we could do, from what we know about our planets and the distance and their orbits, we could possibly work out maybe the object's distance. And that gives us a ballpoint place to start looking from. But if we can find out where it is and what object it is, then we can work out how long it is before things get affected even more from this point, which is what you want to know. I know that. It's what I want to know, but I want to know the exact date. And the only way we can find that is by undoing the mystery of the Milankovitch cycle, which I don't know if there's any work being done on that at the moment, but it needs to. I know this is a science topic. I'm going to touch on something else as well. We might as well, because I was going to do another video tomorrow about this, but I might as well talk about it now. It's not looking good, is it? The current climate, the economic climate of this world is not looking good. What happened in Ecuador, I believe, is we're going to start seeing a lot more than that. I think we're going to see a lot worse than that. Let's face it. We've been shown from the Ukraine that it doesn't cost much to buy a drone, strap some explosives to it, and then fly it to its designated target. I worry with the cost of living crisis and the moronic behaviour of the government officials that run our countries. It isn't going to be long before these drones start hitting the office windows of these buildings where these ignorant people are working, because they're not, let's face it, doing anything about the current crises that are taking place with poverty. They would rather give the United Nations 500 billion between a few countries than help the people that are suffering in poverty, on standards now which go back to the Victorian times in this country. They would rather give it for attacking the climate, what they say is CO2, trying to achieve net zero. It's absolutely appalling. People are suffering, businesses are suffering, and they are still squandering our money on the wrong things. They're giving it away to other countries. They're supporting wars. They are definitely, in my view, guilty of laundering that money back to themselves. It's got out of control, the level of corruption. And that's why I'm going to say my prediction for 2024 could be civil wars like what we've seen in Ecuador. I don't believe that these were drug cartels that went into that studio yesterday with all those guns, and the reason for that was because the police were stopping them selling drugs. I think because these were young people. I think they're pissed off of being paid a couple of dollars a day and still not being able to survive. And I think that we're going to see a lot more of this into 2024. They're saying that there's going to be unrest in Europe, that Europe is, even Elon Musk, I mean, he's an intelligent guy. Elon Musk is saying there's going to be a civil war in Europe soon. It's on its a tinderbox just waiting for a spark. And I think we're starting to see it with the farmers protesting there. We've got problems in this country I mean, I'll just tell you about one of the most stupidest things I've ever came across. I watched a documentary the other day about a farm that had lost 60 heads of its cows. And just to put that in terms of money, a cow in this country is probably about £1,200, £1,300, top of my head, something around there. If it's in calf, it's nearly £2,000. And it lost 60. So you imagine there's 100. If they were all in calf, that would be 120,000. If not, it'd be around about 60, 70,000, 75,000 pound. That's a lot of money for a farm to lose. And it was the reason why that to have these cows culled was because of tuberculosis, and it's been spread mainly by badgers, and the farmers aren't allowed to do anything about the badgers bringing tuberculosis onto the farms. They could, if the farmers could handle it themselves, but the government won't let them. They won't let them cull the badgers. So farms are faced with two scenarios in this country. This is just one of the issues relating to farming. You either take your luck with your cattle and hope that tuberculosis doesn't come onto your land and infect the cows, because if they do, you're going to lose the lot, or you don't farm at all. There is another thing as well. There's £40,000 fines for tampering with the badger's burrow or harming a badger. So you either lose £60,000 worth of cattle, or you get a £40,000 fine for trying to do something about it if you get caught. This is the sort of legislation that needs to be cut, axed. You know what? How can we put these animals, I'm not saying make them extinct, but by cutting the numbers back, we'll save a lot of farms from going bankrupt. And you know what? It seems like they're attacking farming like crazy. So they're not supporting the poor people in the country that are on, benefits. There's been no benefit reform for what seems like since the Egyptian days in this country. So if you find yourself on benefits, you're going to have a shock, because your country's just not got your back anymore if you're in the UK. And I know that's the same for other countries. We've got businesses being attacked by policies, especially the policies relating back to them lockdowns. There was no compensation, no real effective compensation for companies that have gone bankrupt. And I've heard some horrible stories, which has resulted in people losing the house because they couldn't pay for the loan that they took out just before the pandemic to open a restaurant. £500,000 this person borrowed. They got the restaurant ready to open, and then there was an announced lockdown. Defaulted on the payments, the house was secured on the loan, and they lost the loan. They lost the house, and had to declare bankruptcy as well. I think we're going to see a civil war in a lot of countries, and I think what we saw yesterday in Ecuador was just the start. It's just the skin on the outer casing. And I know that this is slightly off topic, but you know what? You're probably thinking, "Oh, I'll just prep," and I've prepped, and I've got months worth of food, I've got years worth of food. It'll be seized. If you don't think I'm joking, you better hide it away like a squirrel, because if it's not seized off people that know you've got it, it will be seized off your government at some point. You think that don't happen in North Korea right now? I know you think, well, that's North Korea, that's not the United States or the United Kingdom or a European country. When things get that bad, they will seize it off you. Russia did it in 1920s and 30s during the war. Those that had to surrender it for all of them, everybody. So if you've got preps, you don't want to talk about it to anyone. And if things do get worse, you want to bury it like a squirrel. This is the crazy times that we're in. We're going to see, this is my prediction, we are going to see, as we've been demonstrated, how easy it is to, it's more effective than a very talented sniper with a 50 cal rifle about a mile away. A drone can be operated by a 10-year-old. With a bit of explosive on it, flew into an office building, maybe a council building, a police station, or whatever they designate they want the target to happen, it will happen. And you've seen, if people like in Gaza can build rockets and explosives, I know they've controlled a lot of the substances in the UK, which are the obvious ones, but a little bit of research on Google and the internet, and they'll find out how to make, effective explosives. And it won't need a lot on a drone, and that's it. And we're close to that now. People will put 2 and 2 together, and they'll realise how easy it is, and then they'll realise that anybody is not protected. There is no protection. That's probably why your billionaires like Bill Gates and Zuckerberg are building underground bunkers, because it's going to be the safest place for them to live. At least they won't have one of these drones, which is demonstrated now, feasible, flying to one of the windows. Because, it's like you don't want to be the only one on the block with something when everybody else has nothing. Those I think are really important words for what is going to take place in 2024. But putting that aside, we're going to continue with the science on trying to work out when, why, and monitor as best we can with what we've got. And I want to just say a big thanks to those that have been helping. I do really appreciate it, and I know that those that cannot genuinely afford to appreciate it as well. So, we're going to do our best. We haven't gone nowhere, and we will keep you informed of events like the magnetic pole reversal, the grand solar minimum, and the returning back to a glacial period. And we'll also keep you involved and notified of other worldly war events. Unbelievable, unprecedented times that we're in right now, with the levels of corruption going on, and they're just getting away with it. Blue, they're in the clear. That money that was sent to Ukraine in them containers in cash, it was struck off the ticket. The ticket was writ out for it. It's gone. That money, don't even talk about that money no more. It's already gone to Ukraine. And that's why, we have people that are able to afford an £85 million house in Kensington. Whilst the other end of the spectrum, you've got people living around Kensington in a tent or a bit of cardboard. Unbelievable. How little we share the resources these days, and how much corruption is taking place. The pandemic was just corruption all the way through it. And who was the ones that was doing the, we'll send our brother that contract for the PPE. Oh, our friend over here is going to do the medicine, the injections. Will people take them? Oh, we'll just make sure, we'll force them to, or they'll lose their job. Or, we'll just cut them out of society, or we'll stop them able to work. It's ridiculous. And it will affect you. I guarantee you at some point you will be caught up directly in this, if you are not already. If you're like me, I don't want to pay 1 penny to an unelected official government like the United Nations or the European Union. I don't want to give them a penny, because I know that organisation is corruption. These are white-collar criminals stealing taxpayers' money, and not at small levels either. This is at horrendous levels, and the excuses they're using to do it is things like CO2, or we need to send money to a country so that they can sustain a war with another country. Giving away a country's assets is a tyranny. Because once it leaves the country, it never usually comes back unless it's coming back in someone's back pocket secretly. And it's wrong on every level. Okay, I've kept you long enough. I'm going to say what I usually do. There's a link down there in the description if you want to help support us. And, the only other thing for me to say is just look after your loved ones the best you can. It's hard times for us all. As always, bye for now.